What is up, guys? NinjaNick333. We're back with another round of the KirwansGameStore League Cup. This is a top 4 match. James Thiel versus Chris Saikala. Chris was, I believe, the one who bubbled in at 4th. There were two people. There were like a lot of people potentially on the bubble. Mike Fouché did bubble out at 5th. I believe one or two other people did bubble out as well. Chris bubbled in, as well as Tori, both with Gardevoir. Unfortunately, Tori is playing against Scott like he did in round 3, and does lose this round, so Scott does get to go on to the finals versus the winner of this match. I did think about recording the other top 4 match with my own camera, but I decided we already saw that match, Gardevoir Mirror, during this tournament, with the same 2 people even. So I just decided against it. I didn't want to put any more pressure on those guys, putting them on camera. I always put a lot of pressure on these guys, putting them on camera all the time, but I felt like it was not necessary. So we're just going to see this top 4 match. Like to see a little bit of diversity here with plays, with decks being able to be recorded and whatnot. So James starts with triple Genesect in play. I believe Chris goes first. It's usually uncommon to see somebody bench Pokemon. Usually you just see them start with their active. And that is because things like a Judge can no longer be played turn 1 ever since they changed that rule. Playing Pokemon on the bench turn 1 doesn't generally benefit you at all. Especially with a card like Escape Rope in format, but since they're all Genesects, you might as well just throw them all down, save yourself some time on your actual turn. So James probably saved himself 1 to 2 seconds on the clock by putting them all into play now. So Chris does go for a Level Ball to get his first Ralts. He is also going to go for an Ultra Ball. He is going to discard a Roxanne as well as a Luminion. A Luminion is a odd choice to discard here. That's saying that you definitely have a way to get a supporter. Looks like he is going to go for the Forest Seal Stone onto his Zacian. Again, not something that I've seen a whole lot of from these Gardevoir decks until this exact tournament, so I'm clearly behind on the meta myself. So we're going to use that to get Battle VIP Pass. Seeing the boost inconsistency that the Forest Seal Stone has does make it a little bit better here. Although the matchups where you play Sky Seal Stone against, it really can make or break the game, whether you get that Sky Seal Stone off. Like if you go against like Arcdura, you know, you only have to knock out 2 Pokemon instead of 3. So we are going to see the Cramomatic is, I guess, going to flip a heads. We're going to search our deck for any 1 card. Getting rid of the Palpad, doing that. If you have the Palpad in your opening hand, feels pretty good to do it that way. Looks like he is going to Ultra Ball at the same time. So with the Cramomatic, he's going to get a Battle VIP Pass. And he's also Ultra Balling as well. So he's going to get a full bench here and will be able to draw as many cards as he wants. Up to 6 cards, since he has 6 Pokemon in play that are all Fusion Strike. Those Genesects can draw quite a lot of cards. Tori will tell you how much he hates Genesect as a card. He thinks it's very unfair. I think it's fine. They print so many cards to just shut Genesect off that I think it's fair now. Especially since there's so many good Dark types in format. I mean, heck, Darkrai V-Star made top 8 at a regional because so many people played Mew. Like, come on now. Before it made top 8 at just the with just like the standard Darkrai list, I was thinking about trying to make like an Arceus Darkrai V-Star deck. Like doing something to try to make Darkrai as viable as possible. Arceus would boost the ability for it to beat Lost Box, which is probably its most awful matchup, which is why it lost in top 4. It hit the only Lost Box deck that was in like the top like 16 or 32 of the tournament, which was wild. Very unfortunate that the Darkrai deck hit Caleb in top 8 of Fresno. But we are going to see an Ultra Ball grabs a Mew VMAX. We are going to see a switch. We will be able to retreat into a Mew. We're going to use our next Genesect to draw more cards here. We did Ultra Ball for that Mew to try to thin out some cards, the Mew VMAX. So pretty good sequencing here from James. He has been playing this Mew deck a lot. He won a league challenge a few weeks before this that I wasn't able to record at because it was only 4 people with this Mew deck as well. I think he played it at another League Cup as well, but I don't think he made top cut at that one. So we're going to Mew for an Ultra Ball here on Chris's side. Very unlikely that this Mew V will be knocked out. Although it is possible if Chris is able to go for a Rare Candy Gardevoir EX, we will potentially be able to see that. We would also need to see some extra energies in the discard pile because I don't believe that there are enough in there as of now. But we do see there are now at least 2, so we should be able to get there. We do have the Gardevoir EX in hand. We just need the Rare Candy now. Looks like we are going to attach for a turn to the Zacian. Looks like Chris is saying that he does not have the Gardevoir EX play. So he is going to go for the Roar of the Sword to get an additional energy onto the Zacian this turn. I'm a little surprised he didn't do that last turn, actually. There was no Path to the Peak or anything in play. He could have done it. He must have just forgot. So it looks like the Mew deck here, James Thiel, is going to be able to Serena up the Zacian V. So this first attack of the game is going to be able to knock out a 2-prizer on Chris's side and take 2 prize cards. Very unfortunate for Chris that he was forced to go for that Sky Seal Stone route, but it was either that or it was to put Luminion in play, so Chris would be in the same position either way. So we are going to see the Temple of Sinnoh come into play to put these abilities back online, take that Path to the Peak back out of play. James does put a coin on his Mew VMAX just to show that it did use Techno Blast on the previous turn, making it so that he cannot attack on the next turn with it. Chris is going to shuffle a Roxanne and another supporter back into his deck with Palpad. I think that if you're playing Mew, it is kind of important to put that marker on it to show that you did use Technoblast the last turn. I always remember, but some people do forget that they need to retreat it or switch it out in order to attack again. So I'm always a fan of putting a marker in play as opposed to not putting a marker in play. So yep, there is the Temple of Sinnoh now. Is going to bump that stadium. Chris almost thinking about playing a Research. Does have the Gardevoir EX now. He can attack this turn. It's unlikely that Mew can one-shot the Gardevoir EX. It would need 3 Power Tablet plus Cleansing Gloves or all 4 Power Tablets. Since I have not found my Cleansing Gloves yet, I do need to find that. I need to look through my 5K box of bulk to find my Cleansing Gloves. I thought I pulled them all out, but I guess I didn't. I don't have any Cleansing Gloves or Spongy Gloves in my ETB of stuff that's good for building decks, so. Surprisingly, because I swear I pulled them out when I last looked through it, but clearly not anywhere. Not even on my mess of a desk. I looked through every pile of trading cards that I have on my desk, and there's none in any of them. So Chris could potentially take a one-shot with a Zacian V. This turn would be pretty good if he has enough energy in there. 4, 8, 9 energy times 3 is 270 plus 60 is enough for the knockout on the Mew VMAX. Chris is able to now take the prize lead and a knockout here. So James does have a very easy knockout. What he's going to want to do is actually take a knockout with Psychic Leap. So what he wants to do is put another Mew V into play, evolve his active into Mew VMAX, and then shuffle his own Mew VMAX into the deck while knocking out the Zacian, and then promote one of the Genesects, and then hope that Chris doesn't have boss's orders for the Mew V. So if Chris has boss's orders for the Mew V, if James is able to pull that play out, then Chris wins fairly easily here. Looks like we are going to go for a Lost Vacuum to try to thin some cards out of the hand. We're going to get rid of a Judge. Looks like we are deciding not to play that. That would be a pretty good thing to play right now to try to thin Chris's hand. But it looks like there is a second Judge. So getting rid of the one Judge with the Lost Vacuum was perfectly fine. Just doing that to thin his hand and deck to make sure that the 4 cards he draws off of this are a little bit more alive. Plus, he does have 4 Genesects in play, so he will be able to draw quite a few cards potentially this turn. The only worry is that you do not have 2 Mew Vs on the bench. If you bench one now, there will only be one. Looks like he does draw it, though, which is great. As well as his last Judge. Gets the Forest Seal Stone. He's going to use the first Genesect to draw until he has 6 cards in his hand. Does get another double turbo, which is pretty great. Gets a Power Tablet, which doesn't really matter for the math, because he will be able to knock it out with just the 50 from Psychic Leap. He is going to put down another Forest Seal Stone to thin that out of his hand. Going to go for another Genesect for another 1. Play that Power Tablet, Genesect for another 1. Lost City. So the Lost City is actually pretty good here because you can Lost Zone the Zacian and make it so that Chris only has 1 Zacian remaining, which is already in his discard pile. So Chris would have to, well, I guess either way he would have to recycle the Zacian with something like Miriam, but getting rid of one with the Lost City makes it less consistent that Chris is going to find his way into another one on this next turn, which he definitely does need to do. I guess there's a way that he could potentially knock out with Shining Arcana Gardevoir, but he would have to hit a Shining Arcana and attach for turn. He doesn't have Champions Festival in his deck. I did let him borrow it for Hartford Regionals, my Champions Festival, but he gave it back during this tournament. He's like, he's like, holding on to this just gave me too much stress. Like being responsible for a card that expensive. Champions Festival used to not be expensive. Even when people played it before, like, you know, Azul and Caleb's group did play it in a previous format in, I think, some sort of Zorak control deck. Because everybody was playing Shrine of Punishments, it would actually rewind a turn of Shrine of Punishments while also replacing the stadium. And that's the only time Champions Festival has ever been playable previously. And the price did shoot up at that point, because I think Champions Festival was a very inexpensive card. And then when that happened, it became more expensive, and people were complaining about the price of it. But it's just skyrocketed. It's like almost beach levels expensive now. For really no reason, because they still print Champions Festivals, and it's not that good. I mean, if you have it, play it in Gardevoir, but if you don't, it's not necessary. But it would be good in this situation, if you were to attack with Shining Arcana. And now I'm just rambling. So, looks like we did go for the knockout with Techno Blast, or maybe Psychic Leap, and chose not to shuffle back in. I think that it's fine. You do feel a little bit safe knowing that both of the Zacians are in the discard pile, but if Chris is able to use multiple Kirlias and Gardevoirs along with a Miriam, you could see those go back into the deck and get knocked out. He does also have another Path to the Peak in play as well, so Chris does need a way to replace that stadium. He can't play Worker because he needs to play Miriam. Or Clara, I guess if he's playing Clara instead, but I think he's a Miriam kind of guy. He does have the Worker in hand, he's eyeing that up, but he won't be able to attack with Zacian this turn to do that, so he won't be likely to take a one-shot. So it looks like the Shining Arcana hit 1 Psychic Energy, he's attached 1 for turn, and now is going to play Roxanne. So how many energy does Chris need to take the one-shot? That's 9, right? So if he accelerates 7 energy from the discard pile, that would knock him out. So he can't actually do that. He can only accelerate 6 to a Shining Arcana Gardevoir. So again, if he was able to hit the double energies off of Shining Arcanas, he did have 2 Shining Arcanas available to him to potentially do that, plus his attach for turn, then he would have had enough. Or if he was able to replace the stadium with Champions Festival, put one more Pokemon down on his bench, he could accelerate 1 energy to the Gardevoir, heal 10, and then put 6 more on it. And then he'd be left with 10 HP remaining and would be able to take the one-shot. So that is why people do like Champions Festival in here. Because it just makes it so you can get that 1 additional energy card from your discard pile onto a Pokemon like this. But again, not good enough to warrant the price. So James just looking through Chris's discard. Chris is doing the same, just to make sure they know which resources have been used. And I think Chris might just be going for the pass here. I think that's what he did. And he does boss up a Kirlia, because James does not have the knockout on a 2-prize Gardevoir EX. So he is going to knock out with Psychic Leap, shuffle the Mew back into the deck, and Chris still just needs a boss's orders to be able to remove the Mew V from play in order to take the knockout. And as long as he does this, he wins the game. He still needs to be able to remove the Path to the Peak, though. Gets the Collapse Stadium, is able to retreat. Now he can accelerate energies with Gardevoir EX's ability. Will take the knockout on the Mew V. Now James will have no Mews in play, and Chris will go up a game. So Chris will still be left with 1 prize card remaining, but James is going to have to establish a Mew VMAX in 1 turn. Like what does James do here? I mean, James could potentially boss to stall if there's no energy in Chris's discard pile. I think that's the... Oh, he has an escape rope. So if he escape ropes and puts a Mew in play, he might actually be able to... Yeah, so he's going to Feather Ball for a Mew V, then escape rope it into the active, because you don't want to leave a Genesect active. I mean, you'll lose the game either way, so you might as well leave the Mew active, and then force Chris to put up a Pokemon that doesn't have any energy, and force him to try to find another one. So if there is 1 in deck left for Chris, this will be fine because he can just attach. But if there's not, this is going to be pretty bad because Chris does not... Oh, he does have energies in the discard pile. So what James is looking to do is also find Path to the Peak. Interesting. So I would have thought that you would need to escape rope and... Well, no, because if he escape ropes, Chris just puts up the Gardevoir EX, and then it can put the energy onto itself. Yeah, so I'm not really sure what James's game plan. I guess he has to boss specifically. He has to boss and path in order to buy himself the 1 turn he needs. Oh, he has Echoing Horn and 1 prize card remaining. So he's going to Echoing Horn the Luminion, which can't have the energy accelerated to it. He's used 3 Genesects, it looks like. He's going to Ultra Ball to thin his hand. He's going to get rid of another Mew VMAX. Oh, it looks like he doesn't have any left in his deck. Does he not have a Mew VMAX left in his deck? Yeah, because he discarded 1 early. He just discarded another one, and there's 1 in his discard pile. Yeah, he just discarded. And then James accidentally draws 6 cards instead of 5, because he only has 5 Fusion Strike Pokemon in play. And Chris catches it early. Looks like he did hand shuffle a little bit, but I think it would have been obvious to be able to identify which card that was. If I were Chris, I would have been able to identify which card it was at least. And, but James is like, you know, I missed the boss, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, he was looking to boss up that Luminion to buy himself the turn he needed. And yeah, he discarded all his Mews doing that, because he only had that 1 Mew VMAX left. So he would have also needed to like Silene or something the next turn, but I don't think I saw that from his deck. So I don't think that was something that was actually possible. So James does go up or go down 1 game. Chris does win game number 1. So Chris 1 game closer to being in the finals. So James is going to go first, of course. Makes sense. Does start off with a Battle VIP pass. Always good to see. At least one of those being started for the Mew VMAX deck. He is thinking about going for double Genesect. He's also identifying if he wants to go for a Mew as well. He's pulled all those three to the front of the deck. He might have another way to search Pokemon as well in his hand, like a Feather Ball, which would get him that Mew V. I do like Feather Ball in Mew better than Nest Ball. I've been honestly thinking about swapping it so it's 1 Nest Ball, 2 Feather Ball instead. Because whenever I draw the Nest Ball, it's always too late to play it. I'll always have like 6 Pokemon in play and no Cramomatic in hand. Yeah, it looks like he does have the Feather Ball, but he also has an Ultra Ball. So he's going to Ultra Ball and Feather Ball. Discarding the Roxanne and the Lost City, perfectly fine to get rid of those. You would like to see the Lost City be kept just in case you like are able to knock out a Shining Arcana Gardevoir or a Gardevoir EX. You can just Lost Zone that, and if Chris has prized the other Gardevoir EX, he just like loses the game or doesn't really have the ability to play Miriam after that. So it's always good to have that Lost City, but the path to the peak is usually a lot stronger. This is why Gardevoir usually plays 3 to 4 outs to change the stadium or remove the stadium, just because, you know, it's super relevant. You need Gardevoir EX's ability online in order to even play the game. So we are going to attach a Choice Belt to our benched Mew V. The Choice Belt isn't super relevant in this matchup. It helps with the damage against the Zacian V, but only when it's at full health. Which Chris did start with it, so it might end up being a thing. Chris starting this Zacian here is probably a death sentence, because that's going to make it so he goes down 2 prize cards immediately. But Chris was in that position in the previous game and still managed to come out on top, so we'll have to see if Chris even has Sky Seal Stone in his deck. If he does, he could always take a 4 prize turn off of a VMAX Mew. So we do see another Forest Seal Stone coming down here. We got 2 of those available to us. We haven't needed to play either of those, so even if Chris did play something like a Lost Vacuum in this deck, which Gardevoir does not usually play, we will still see one of those 4 Seal Stones still stay in play. So Chris Ultra Balling, discarding the Roxanne, turn 1 yet again. Again, fine if you are able to Pal Pad that back into the deck. Looks like he is thinking about going for the Mew. Does he have a way to move his Zacian? I wouldn't think so. So I don't know if I would want to go for the Mew yet. Looks like he's going to go for the Radiant Greninja. He has energy cards in hand, and he can thin his deck a little bit more. I think that I would have saved the Fog Crystal until after the concealed cards, just to increase your odds of drawing into Ralts. Then you could Fog Crystal for another Ralts after that. So there is 1 less Ralts that you can hit off of this concealed cards now. If you were going for a Psychic Energy to use for concealed cards, I would say that playing the Fog Crystal is correct, but I think holding on to it would have been better. Looks like we are going to attach an energy to the Radiant Greninja. Decides against it, attaches to the active, and then uses Roar of the Sword. I think attaching to the active is better because if James was somehow able to miss the Mew VMAX and or the double turbo, then you have the ability to attack with the Zacian the next turn. And that's going to make the Mew VMAX a 2-shot, get a little bit more value out of this Zacian, and if it does get knocked out, well, that's 1 more energy in the discard pile, so it's fine. So we do see a Cramomatic hitting a Heads is going to search the deck for that Mew VMAX. That's probably telegraphing the fact that there is already a double turbo in hand. Otherwise, I think it would have been more correct to go for the double turbo, just because there are multiple ball outs in deck to try to get to the Mew VMAX. Looks like he has Hisuian Heavy Ball in hand and chooses not to play it. I think what I would have done is played the Hisuian Heavy Ball and then failed to find, but identified all 6 prize cards and written them down. And then that would have been 1 less card in hand. You could have drawn 1 more card But it's interesting to see the different decisions that some players take because, you know, not getting rid of that is fine if you have the Ultra Ball to discard it with, so. Then you're not discarding a potentially more relevant resource with the Ultra Ball. Looks like we do get into the double turbo though. We do play a power tablet, so we are able to take the knockout without having to use our benched Mew VMAX that has the choice belt, being able to conserve that for another Zacian if that comes into play. And Chris immediately concedes because he has a completely dead hand with no cards to play. So we are going to go into a game 3. That game 2 is very quick. We do have 35 minutes left on the timer. I do like that they have that at the top of the screen here so that we know exactly how much time is left in the round. So 35 more minutes in order for Chris or James to be able to pull this out. They are 1-1 now. So hopefully it doesn't go the same way for Chris in the last game and we can see a more drawn out game 3 that's a little more back and forth. I know I played against Tori, who was on in this tournament during round 3, and we were at a different League Cup, which is going to be uploaded next. I didn't record that round for myself, but I was against Tori. He was playing Gardevoir, and I basically had the win if I went for it, and I chose not to. It was a risk. I would have had to quad Power Tablet and Boss, and I didn't have the 4th Power Tablet and Boss in my hand, and my deck was still like 30 cards with Mew. And then he managed to get a Sky Seal Stone one-shot on my Mew VMAX and ended up taking the game because he had 4 prize cards remaining. And had I just played the 3 Power Tablets and used 1 Genesect, I would have drawn into both Boss and the 4th Power Tablet. And I would have been able to knock out the Gardevoir EX and take the game because I was at 2 prize cards remaining. So sometimes you just have to, you know, risk it for the biscuit. You got to make more correct decisions sometimes. So this matchup can go either way, especially if Chris does have that Sky Seal Stone. But I've only seen 4 Seal Stone from him so far, so he might not actually be playing it. You also see James does start with the Oricorio. It's a little bit unusual. A lot of people have been cutting Oricorio as of late, but I think with the recent uptick of Arceus, Chris benches the 4 Seal Stone before the Pokemon V. It's a little funny to see. But we do... the Oricorio does help a lot in Arceus matchups. If you're going against like Arceus Umbreon, the Umbreon can only hit you for 300. You actually live on 10. It does force you to go for the Psychic Leap on the next turn and then move into like a Genesect to take a hit, which is not always a play that you can go for. But also the Arceus cannot one-shot a Mew V, the basic, if you have Oricorio in play as well, as long as they have the double turbo on them, because they'll be hitting 160 instead. So the math does end up relevant against Arceus decks. So I still like the Oricorio, especially since not a lot of people in my area like Kyogre. They don't feel skilled enough to play Kyogre, which I don't blame them. I might try it out at the tournament that's going on tonight. I don't know if I'll be able to record that or not, but I would have to build the deck still, and I think I'm just going to YOLO run it with Mew again because it's best of 1. It's a free win-a-box tournament I'm going to, which is crazy. First place gets a box. Apparently this place that's fairly new has, it's in Colony Center Mall in Colony, which is like just outside of Albany, New York. And they get like 30 to 40 players for their weekly league, which is unheard of in this area. Weekly leagues normally have like 10 people at best. And they're all on different days, so none of them conflict with each other. So we're going to go get a full bench here for James. We're going to put the Forest Seal Stone down, draw some cards with Genesect. Not really much you can do on this turn. You might as well just leave that Oricorio in the active just in case Chris is able to get a cheeky knockout here. He could always go for a Rare Candy Gardevoir and attack with either the Zacian or the Gardevoir. I think attacking with Gardevoir is a little bit more correct just because it has more HP. James is a lot less likely to be able to knock that out. Again, would need 4 power tablets or 3 power tablets and a cleansing gloves. I'm not sure if he is playing the cleansing gloves because I have not seen that from him yet. Gonna draw a couple more cards here with Genesect. We do get a double turbo energy. We could attach that to one of our Mews. Yeah, definitely the one without the choice belt, just because in case one of them gets boss knocked out, then you only lose 1 resource as opposed to 2. So spread those out amongst the 2 Pokemon. And again, especially since the choice belt does not matter as much in this matchup, but if they do remove the double turbo from play, you at least still get to keep that choice belt. So Chris is going for the Mysterious Tail with the Mew. Does find a Battle VIP Pass, whoop-de-doo. Probably to discard with an Ultra Ball, which we do see, and another Battle VIP Pass as well. Nice League promo one. Non-holo. I think at this point he does have a playset of them. I think he only had 3 during this tournament. Get a Kirlia in play. We are going to use Refinement to discard a Psychic Energy and draw 2 more cards. Do get a Temple of Sinnoh. Not super relevant. That's really just for the Lugia matchups. You could play it here, and it would force James to attach a second double turbo, or just, you know, replace the stadium with Path to the Peak. So, and you really don't want James to replace your stadium with Path to the Peak. You want the Path to the Peak to come out first, then you put down your Temple of Sinnoh. So it looks like we're just using Roar of the Sword here onto the Zacian and passing. And that's not that great of a start here for Chris. He only has 1 Kirlia in play. Still has 2 Ralts, which is great. He might be able to get a Gardevoir EX play off next turn. But this also gives James another chance to get that Path to the Peak in play. So we are going to get double Mew VMAX here. I do like playing this matchup with 3 Mews in play, so you can keep 1 as a Mew V for Psychic Leap onto a Zacian V. And then having the Oricorio in play also to try to, like, make it so your opponent has to play a little bit more weird with math. But I think you could replace the Oricorio with the Mew V. You could also replace the 3rd Genesect with the Mew V. Attaching a... Or no, I thought he was attaching a Judge to his Genesect, but no. He's using a Lost Vacuum to get rid of his own Forest Seal Stone, just to thin it out of the hand. He's going to use Serena, again, to bring up this Zacian V. He's going to Pal Pad back in the Serena to be able to do this again on a future turn. Serena can only bring up Pokemon V, but that's fine because Zacian is a Pokemon V. Gardevoir EX is not, so you do need to Boss's Orders that. We're gonna Genesect for 4 more cards. Gets another Choice Belt. So yeah, he's probably not playing the Cleansing Gloves if he has 2 Choice Belts. We are gonna see the switch into the Mew VMAX. Attach a Choice Belt. Cramomatic. Oh, he's just going off. Fails, but that's fine because you still have 1 more Genesect left. You can draw yet another 4 cards. Gets yet another 4 Seal Stone. Might as well just attach that for now. And take the knockout with Techno Blast. So he's going to put that nice Rowlet coin down on there. I do really like that one. Because it's a nice green. I like that color of green. I like when the coins match the color that the Pokemon is supposed to be. So like if you had like a blue Kyogre coin, green Rowlet coin, silver Lugia coin, stuff like that. But sometimes they're just like weird colors. So we're gonna Level Ball for a Kirlia. We can use Refinement number 1 to get a Roxanne. We're gonna Fog Crystal. Probably for a Psychic Energy. Yep, looks like it. We are going to see the rare candy to a Gardevoir EX, which is fantastic. We might be able to see an attack this turn. It might have to be with the Gardevoir EX, though. What you really want to do is have a Zacian here, so you can take a one-shot, preferably with a Sky Seal Stone. And then you can just win off of knocking out a Genesect on a future turn. Usually you want to knock out the Genesect first and then go for the Sky Seal Stone, just to make it so your opponent can't Roxanne you, but in the situation Chris is in now, you might as well try to go for the 4-prize turn. Let your opponent Roxanne you. You still have 2 Curlias in play you can potentially draw out of it. Chris just benching this Manaphy just to thin it out of his hand and deck. Maybe try to use it as an odd prize if he needs to buy a turn. Not really what you want to see, though. Worker and Roxanne going back into the deck. He knows he's going to need that Worker to get rid of the Path to the Peak in a future turn. That's why it is better if you're only playing 3 outs to a Stadium replacement. You do want one of them to be your Worker, just because you can Pal Pat it back into the deck. It's really important to get rid of Path to the Peak when you're playing Gardevoir. So we are going to just hit for 190. That is the best play Chris had available to him, but it does feel kind of bad because we could always see a Psychic Leap in a future turn. If James maybe plays Penny, he could always Penny up the Oricorio or one of the Genesects to put a Mew V back down. Penny is a card that is played in Mew now. Some people on occasion would tech Volo, which is better if you want to discard a Mew VMAX that has damage on it. But generally, Penny is better because you can pick up a Genesect and then reuse the ability in the same turn, which is pretty great. And also, you don't have to permanently discard that Pokemon. You get to keep it, like rebench it. Only works on basics, so it doesn't work on the Mew VMAX, but it works on Mew V in the rare situations where that happens. But it's really for the Lost Box matchup. They like to stack damage with Sableye and Greninja onto those Genesects because it's a lot harder to heal those off than it is the Mew VMAX, which can just copy Psychic Leap. So you use Penny to try to combat that. So drawing until we have 6 yet again with our first Genesect of the turn. We are going to use Cramomatic yet again. Doesn't really matter if we hit heads or not because we kind of have everything we need. The only thing that we're missing here is Path to the Peak. We'd really like to see Path to the Peak here. James will most likely retreat into the new Mew VMAX that's fully built up on the bench. The fresh one that just got that double turbo attached to it this turn. The only thing we are digging for at this point is that Path to the Peak. So again, Cramomatic. Hopefully this one hits heads. The odds do say that it will be a heads. Looks like it is. Yeah, since the last one failed, 50-50 shot. More likely that this one is going to hit. That's just how probability works. But again, it's still 50-50. You could always hit tails on every single one of them. So he's going to grab... Okay, that's his hand. He grabbed 1 card. I thought he grabbed 2 cards for a second, but that's just the way he put his hand down. He's going to Ultra Ball away a double turbo and a Serena. I think that's fine to do. There's no benched V Pokemon for Chris, so the Serena's really not going to help you out too much, unless you wanted to use it as a draw supporter, but you always have your Genesects. You don't really need to use it as a draw supporter very often. So we do have a Power Tablet as well as a Roxanne. So maybe there are no paths left in his deck for some reason. Maybe they're all prized. Because otherwise I would have liked to see that Cram get the Path to the Peak. I guess he doesn't really need it this turn because James is probably not knocking out the... Or maybe he is. Maybe that's what he's going for. Maybe he is going for the knockout on the active Gardevoir EX. So James still has 4 prize cards remaining. Looks at them with the Hisuian Heavy Ball, fails. Just retreats by moving the damage counters. We are technically not correct. You do have to move the Pokemon, technically, but it's fine. Nobody cares. And just hits for a bunch. So that is... Looks like there's 180 damage on there. Did he attack with... Oh, he might have attacked with... Oh, God, what's it called? The second attack on the Mew VMAX, he might have copied. I can't remember attack names today. I don't know why. Chris is eyeing up this Miriam. He does need to recycle a Zacian V. That would put that back into deck and draw him a few more cards if he has any Curlias in there as well. Looks like the Zacian is the only Pokemon left in there in the discard pile, so might as well go for that. This is a lot closer of a game than it seems. Chris still being at 6 prize cards, but, you know, he could always, you know, play... Well, I guess Boss's orders would have been a little better this turn to take the knockout on the Mew VMAX on the bench. Chris does also have to hit through the Oricorio. I'm not sure. Does that math matter? No. The Oricorio math doesn't matter if he's one-shotting a Mew VMAX, because he would be hitting for 340. Looks like Chris is going to have to two-shot this Mew VMAX as well. There are no Mew Vs in play from James here. So what I would like to see is if this Gardevoir Shining Arcana goes down, Chris could respond with a Zacian with a Sky Seal Stone on it. Take 4 prize cards. And then even if James does Psychic Leap the other Mew back into the deck, Chris can win by taking 2 prize cards off of a Genesect even. So yeah, this game is coming down to be a lot closer than it seems. So we're going to see the boss's orders is going to bring up the Gardevoir EX, and this is bad for Chris because now if that Gardevoir EX goes down, Chris is now going to have to take a knockout with the Shining Arcana Gardevoir on one of these 2 Mew VMAXs. It just retreat, switches the damage counters again, and Techno Blasts yet again. So I guess the damage that was on the Gardevoir, I don't think it was right. Because he did use a Power Tablet on the last turn. He should have been hitting for 190 with Techno Blast. Plus the 30 would have been 220, and there was only like 180 on there. So I don't think that damage math was correct. James is looking through the discard pile to make sure that there are no Pokemon V in there. Chris evolving to the EX. I don't know if this is correct here. I think you have to risk getting Rock Sand just because you could get bossed. I guess either way. What are you more likely to do? Get bossed or get... So there's 1 boss and 1 Serena down, I believe, from James. So there could still be 1 boss remaining. So Chris is going to fill his bench to make sure that there are only single prizers in play. And this is a 2... I guess the Gardevoir EX is a 2-prizer that has a ton of HP. So with the amount of Power Tablets that James has already played, plus at this point seeing 2 Choice Belt, knowing that there are likely no... there's likely no Cleansing Gloves in the deck. It's impossible that James would be able to one-shot a Gardevoir EX. So yeah, putting it in play is actually perfectly fine here. And then you don't have to worry about the Rock Sand. So this is actually sizing back up in Chris's favor here. James is going to be forced to Psychic Leap, but will he be able to Psychic Leap for a knockout on this Gardevoir? Chris does have 3 prize cards remaining, so being able to knock out the Mew VMAX is going to be a way that Chris could definitely win. So you do have to remove that ability for Chris to take the 3 prize cards off of the board and risk that he doesn't have the boss. So you do Roxanne him here. Chris not having any way to draw but the active Pokemon. So if we get enough power tablets to be able to knock out with Psychic Leap, is that even possible? You need to hit at least 100. You're hitting base 50 because of the double turbo. With 2 power tablets, that is enough to take the knockout. So yeah, so he's going to be able to Psychic Leap for the knockout. No! Wait. He just put that Mew V in play. He can't evolve it. Yeah, there we go. I was going to say. I'm like, not only is that wrong for James, but it's also not possible to be done. Yeah, so I think if you're James, you path to the peak, and then you Psychic Leap, shuffle the Pokemon back into the deck. And then put up Oricorio? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. You could put up Genesect too. Chris could potentially get a knockout on the Oricorio with the Cresselia. And then on the next turn after that, take a knockout by using boss's orders. So he does have a couple of turns left available to him, but he's going to have to hard draw into some outs here. Looks like he does have a stadium. He just top decked the Collapse Stadium. He has a, I think it's a Judge in hand. So I think if you're Chris, you go for the attack with the Cresselia this turn, knock out the Oricorio, go down to 2 remaining. Oh no, but James still has 1 prize card remaining. So you have to attack with Gardevoir EX. And then hope that James doesn't have the boss's orders. This is a very close game. Chris looking through his deck with this Fog Crystal, deciding what he wants to get out. Looks like it's going to be the last Psychic Energy that's available in his deck. Twelve and a half minutes-ish left on the clock. Plenty of time to finish this game with James only having 1 prize remaining and Chris having 3. So plays the Collapse Stadium. That's going to make it so James has a full bench now. Both of them do, really. Yeah, and we're going to have to see... Yeah, I think you have to attack with the Gardevoir EX this turn and hope your opponent doesn't have boss. If you have maybe Judge in hand, play that. Because James does have more than 4 cards. He hasn't played a supporter yet. And it looks like the boss's orders is in hand, so I think that may have been prized and he might have drawn it. Either that or he just already drew it. How many cards are left in deck for James as well? Oh. Oh, so Chris goes for the Serena, brings up the Mew V. And James shows that he has what there is left to take the knockout. And yeah, Chris was not able to take the knockout with that Gardevoir EX on the Mew because of the Oricorio. So the Oricorio putting in a ton of work there right at the end. So that was a really weird spot for Chris to be in. And that was an extremely close game. So that really could have gone Chris's way, but just ever so slightly short. James is able to go on to the finals versus Scott. So he's going to have to power through one more Gardevoir deck in the finals. So we will see you guys then. As always, do not forget to comment, like, and subscribe and all that good stuff. And check out that description box down below for links to the Discord and the Twitch and all that. And we will see you guys then for the finals of this League Cup in Catskill, New York.